SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Discover the Copiah Advantage. Copiah County is a Mid-South gem with a spirit of opportunity, a business-friendly environment, and access to major transportation networks. Copiah County, let's do business. Visit CopiahWorks.com today and discover the Copiah Advantage.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Hey, how y'all doing? Morning. Scott Sands sitting in for Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming everywhere, supertalk.fm. You can also find me on X and social media. I am at Scott Sands Media. I love that universally, regardless of where you work, there is one complaint I believe every employee can agree on, and Rhino was just saying this off the air before we started the show, and it's two-factor authentication on work computers. I understand the security concerns, but there's got to be an easier way. And I have had social media accounts and emails hacked before, so I use two-factor authentication on everything and have a pretty complicated password for myself and all of my personal accounts. But there is no reason why 5 minutes of not using a computer could pass. And you have to, I don't know how your two-factor authentication works, whether it's a text message or at my last company, we had to open an entirely separate app. I think it was Google Authenticator or one of those authentication apps, and verify through a QR code or a 7-digit code, and then you would have to re-enter your password. So it actually became like a 3-factor authentication process, which slowed everything down. It keeps it secure, and it's needed, especially with all of the hacking today. But you're right, Rhino. There's got to be a happy medium somewhere between just having a simple password or no password at all and going through all of the extra steps to secure your infrastructure from cyber hackers, right? I don't know what that is.
Considering the use of AI can now determine, based on the length between your keystrokes, who wrote certain documents. You would think it could know, oh, well, they typed that password this way every day. That's them.
Or the biometrics with using a fingerprint or a retinal scan. My laptop now scans for retina and then asks me for my password. I wouldn't have set up the retina scan if I knew I would still have to enter a code to get into my own laptop that nobody cares about.
Now, the biometrics made sense when I worked in a pharmacy because, I mean, you got drugs under lock and key, so we had to clock in with a handprint, and that felt really futuristic. And even though that was 2 decades ago, I think they're still using the same handprint.
They probably are. And the CAPTCHA codes that every website has now, where it will ask you to identify every image that has a stairwell in it. And maybe I'm getting old, but I always miss one and go through the capture process 3 times before I get all of the bicycles or all of the crosswalks or all of the buses that are in the 9 square images in there. It's gotta be an easier way.
At least those
I don't know
are
what
better
that answer
than the
is.
scrambled word
The letters
pseudo
that you
word.
can't read.
Yeah.
I can never make out some of the letters. Is that a G or a 6? And how old am I now? So I hope you're having a great day. How's your Wednesday so far, Rhino?
Oh, not too bad. The sun's shining, but it's not quite as warm as it has been, so it's going to be a beautiful day.
Dipping down a little bit, a little chilly for the middle of May, and I know a lot of people, including myself, wreaking havoc with our sinuses and allergies. There's an early baseball game on today. I've got that on in the background. Mississippi State, Texas A&M got rained out. They're playing now. They're in the top of the second, and I don't know what just happened. But right before we went on the air, I looked, and it was 1-0 Texas A&M, but now State is trailing 6-0 at the top of the second, so some room to make up. A lot of big games in the playoffs today. Southern Miss is playing in the Sun Belt Conference final today at 12:30, and Ole Miss Florida play tonight at 8 o'clock, so a lot of great baseball action going on. One of the big stories that's getting some national headlines, and I'll follow the game throughout the morning, escaped prisoners from New Orleans. This is getting national attention. I know that there are alerts up in Mississippi as these escapees have now had several days to leave, although it seems like most of them have stuck around the New Orleans area. 5 of the 10 inmates have been captured from the Orleans Parish Justice Center. There was a 5th capture, Corey Boyd, 19 years old, taken into custody last night. He was charged with second-degree murder and obstruction of justice related to a 2023 shooting. 5 inmates are still at large. And, Rhino, did you know you could bet on who the next capture will be? This is the society we live in. I joked about this last week and a couple of weeks ago, filling in, that you could bet on the next pope. Well, now on one of those betting apps, the papal betting was on Kalshi. Polymarket, which is another one of these betting apps, you can bet on who the next inmate captured will be. This is where we are today. Put $5 on from me on Antoine Massey as the next inmate captured. I don't know why, but it just kind of stood out as you can bet on anything. I don't know if Polymarket is available in the state. There are obviously through VPN ways around that, but you can actually bet on the next inmate to be captured from Orleans Parish. And this story, I want to talk about this if we have time at some point today on how these suspects, how these escapees may be tracked down. I tend to believe, as I heard some former FBI agents discussing earlier this morning on the national news shows, that they probably are still in New Orleans. You would have thought that they would have split different ways. You got 10 people running in 10 different directions. It may make them harder to track down and figure out what their plan was. But with all the attention that's been focused on this escape, they're probably holed up somewhere with outside help. At least one person, I think multiple people now have been arrested in connection with the escape. Sterling Williams, who worked inside the jail as a maintenance worker, was arrested for allegedly turning off the water to the cell to facilitate their escape. And it really has highlighted many of the security failures at this aging jail, which is a problem so many county jails face today. Staffing concerns, I think that this particular jail facility is working at 60% capacity on staff, broken security cameras. It seems like some easy fixes, and I realize that the city, the county, the state, as is the case around the country, are facing budget shortfalls. But putting some more security cameras, putting some motion detectors in may have helped with the staffing issues. This is the Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams talking about the escape.
10 violent offenders don't make their way into a pod made for 2 and make good their escape through concrete, rebar, and barbed wire without there being some sort of inside assistance.
About $5.2 million are needed for repairs. There are currently over 200 law enforcement personnel from agencies involving the FBI, Marshals, Louisiana State Police, New Orleans Police Department involved in this search, which has raised fears amongst residents and witnesses. Some families have left the city due to concerns about retaliation from escapees, especially Derek Groves. There is a history of poor conditions, federal oversight since 2013, inadequate supervision, infrastructure issues at the jail. They're under a consent decree right now. And as I want to talk about at some point, facial recognition technology is being used. It's called Project NOLA. It's a nonprofit. 5,000 cameras are operating in the New Orleans area. And at least one of these escapees was captured using this technology in the French Quarter. I don't know if this was the one I saw. Rhino, you may have seen the footage. One of the escapees caught sleeping on a bench in the French Quarter. I don't know if this was Kendall Myers who was caught in the French Quarter, if he was captured using the facial recognition technology. But obviously that raises some privacy concerns, because a lot of this technology is being used not just in this case, in this escape, which we certainly want these criminals off the streets, but there's been a lack of transparency in how this facial recognition technology has been used. And even though crime in the city of New Orleans is believe it or not, down, I think the perception is otherwise. We've had a terror attack there in the last 6 months, and I think that this is a needed form of security for the city, and many other cities around the country are using facial recognition as a way, whether it be through license plate readers, another form of privacy concerns. Some of these images are going to people who are using the information without going through the process that was designed by code under Project NOLA. And we'll talk about those security concerns later in the show. Dan Carr will join me next. We'll also talk with Congressman Mike Ezell, who had a late night last night to try to pass the big, beautiful bill for President Trump's agenda. State Rep Kevin Felcher will join us after 11 o'clock today. We'll look at some of the airport concerns. And Tricia McLaughlin, the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, she just finished a press conference. We'll talk with her before the end of the show today. I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert in the Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk, Mississippi. The C Spire text line is open for you as well, 601-879-4395.
So good, I got you.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Gerard's off today. He'll be back Friday. I'm Scott Sands, SuperTalk Mississippi, at Scott Sands Media on X. States up to bats, bottom of the second, down by 6 against Texas A&M. I'm keeping an eye on that game, and I've got the red lights on in my home studio for State. Normally I would say it's for the Alabama Crimson Tide, but sure, I'll go with Hail State today. Dan Carr is joining me now from Freedom Frontline, 1776.com. Dan, it's great to meet you. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to coming on, and of course, I enjoyed listening to Gerard and on Middays, and it's good to talk to you. And thanks for having me.
You know, I used to manage a lot of bands in my career, and every time you book an opening act, you always want them to be worse than the headliner. So that's kind of who I am. Is I'm just here to fill the spots. But if we can have a good time, we will. I can't believe, Dan, that we're already talking about the 2027 election, and there will be some big issues facing the state of Mississippi and some important decisions to be made for leadership roles in the state as well. I mean, there's already speculation about who may be running for governor.
Yes, sir. You know, a lot of us, around the state, as well, we're talking about who's going to run, speculation. And as a matter of fact, when I leave here, I'm going to have lunch with, he's speaking at the Harrison County Republican Club today. Last is in Pike County speaking to Republicans. And whenever we finished, I mean, a lot of people are wanting to talk about, 2027. Who do you think is going to run for governor? Who's going to run for lieutenant governor? Who does Mississippi need, whenever it comes to being the next governor, or being the next lieutenant governor. So these are conversations that I think are important, of course, among, conservatives in our state. And so I think they're good conversations. But let me remind you, Scott, something that is very important is June 3rd, just in 13 or 14 days, we have, elections here in Mississippi whenever it comes to these municipalities, electing mayors and aldermen. And so we can't forget, to get out and vote June 3rd as well. But I love having conversations about 2027, about who's going to run or who potentially can. I think they're great conversations to have, and I think now's a good time to start having them.
I heard Chad White on with Richard Carr yesterday or day before, and he's leading some of these straw polls, some criticism of him on social media. from the MAGA right, but he seems to be the front runner as of now. I think the lieutenant governor probably has aspirations as well, if I had to guess.
Yes, sir. When you look and you talk, Shad is absolutely, in the front runner, whenever you look at, who's going to run for governor. But there's one name, another gentleman who's a businessman here in Mississippi, Tommy Duff, that if he gets in this race, I think that Mr. Duff will kind of clear the field. I think if Mr. Duff doesn't get in the race, I think that the field's going to be crowded. You're going to have people, that will be in that race. But if Duff gets in the race, he's going to clear the field. And I think that, you'll have the state auditor, Shad White. I think he'll stay in that race. And but Delbert and others, I think they'll not get involved in that race, which potentially could have a crowded field for lieutenant governor if Mr. Tommy Duff does run for governor. But one thing to look at as well, Scott, and we all know this, especially in Mississippi, whenever you talk about the MAGA right, whenever you talk about MAGA in general, whoever Donald Trump comes out and supports will be the next governor. If Donald Trump were to get involved, in the 2027 election, whoever that is, they'll be the next governor. They'll be the next lieutenant governor. You cannot, in my opinion, beat Donald Trump in Mississippi. It's not going to happen.
Well, and I think the state has been moving in the right direction, especially when it comes to tax reform, leading some other conservative-leaning states that should follow suit in what Mississippi has done to cut income taxes in the state. I think it's interesting you talk about the lieutenant governor's race. That seems to be something I've learned over the last few months filling in for Gerard and Richard is how much power in Mississippi the lieutenant governor really has. And it seems like this particular lieutenant governor, who I don't know personally, I've never spoke with him, but it seems like he has held back a lot of these bills that the state really needs to move forward with for whatever reason.
So the current lieutenant governor, he's held back some reform that us conservatives really want and we really crave and want. Governor Tate Reeves has done a great job. Governor Tate Reeves has been pushing. I mean, he laid out his agenda whenever he started running his second term, so things that he wanted to see happen. So the current governor, Tate Reeves, has done a good job, when it comes to eliminating the state income tax, and whoever the next governor, lieutenant governor is going to be, we need to have somebody that is going to expand on the elimination of the state income tax. Whenever it comes to cutting fraud and cutting waste and abuse and unnecessary spending, whoever the next governor is going to be and the next lieutenant governor is going to be, we need somebody that's going to stand firm, that's not going to back down whenever it comes to cutting, some of this waste. And that is one reason why people can like or hate him. But that is one reason why Shad White is the front runner right now. It is because he has been fighting, for some of these things, of cutting fraud and cutting waste. I'm going to tell you another good conservative piece of legislation that I know a lot of conservatives would really like to see happen in Mississippi, and that is whenever it comes to promoting school choice. I think that school choice would be a very, I think it's an ideal piece of legislation. And if we've got the right lieutenant governor, and if we've got the right governor, and of course the right speaker, and I believe we do have the right speaker, I believe that we could see school choice passed, and we can have much more needed, conservative policy get passed.
I want to go back to what you mentioned about cutting fraud, waste, and abuse at the state level, because I think that's very important. And I'm certainly not advocating for Shad White, but I see what he is doing in the state, and several other states around the country have followed the lead of Elon Musk and Doge by creating their own states' government efficiency agencies to some degree. And states have been much more effective at taking action against this waste, fraud, and abuse than we've seen Republican members of Congress who talk a good game, get their picture taken with Elon Musk, talk about the need to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and then when it comes down to it, when the votes are called, they punt, and they don't want to actually take action. States seem to be putting in the work there, including Mississippi.
You're right, and Shad has done a good job, at cutting waste, and he's very active, on social media. Shad's young. He's 39, 40 years old. He is young. And so Elon Musk has made, Doge, obviously, especially among MAGA Republicans and conservatives, he has made cutting waste and cutting fraud. He has put it at the top of the list, whenever it comes to, people. And you're right. A lot of people do talk a good campaign. A lot of people do talk, good talk whenever eliminating or cutting fraud. And then whenever it does come time to do it, they do punt. And so it is good to see states, taking back some of that belongs to the state, and I'm glad to see that there are many states that are doing, some of this cutting, if DC do it, at least the states can do it. And so we have the right president, obviously. Donald Trump is the right man for the job. And so I'm thankful that he's there. But we need, whenever you look at Mississippi and you look at moving forward, whoever's going to take that next spot as far as lieutenant governor, it is very important that we as Mississippians make the right choice. And we pick the right. And so that's what I preach. For people to do their homework, people to do their research, look at the candidates, study the candidates. Don't just study what they're saying, but study what they've done. And I think that is one thing that people will find whenever you look at Tommy Duff. Reason why he is so appealing to many is because of his business mind. And whenever you look at somebody that's business genius like him, I see a lot of people want to get on board with that. Want to get on board with, that's what we need for Mississippi. We need somebody who is a business leader. And then you have Shad White, who is cutting waste and cutting fraud. And then people are like, we need Shad White. And I think it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a very, very good race, I think, in 2027.
It's interesting to compare what's happening in the state of Mississippi moving forward to what I'm seeing in Ohio, where Vivek Ramaswamy, another successful businessman with the endorsement of Donald Trump, got the Ohio Republican Party endorsement more than 300 days before the primary. That's unprecedented in Ohio, and I think that we might see something similar in Mississippi and other states that need to move forward with more conservative leadership. We're talking to Dan Carr, Freedom Frontline, 1776.com. One of the priorities I see for the state, as you mentioned as well, is got to be school choice and giving parents more control over their kids' education, and that's been stalled in the state.
You're right. And back to what you said about Ohio with Vivek Ramaswamy is, once again, it goes back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump gets involved, Donald Trump gets engaged, and the same thing will happen in Mississippi. If Donald Trump gets involved, and I don't know if he will or won't, I think he will, but if he gets involved, that race, will be over just high as far as the nominee. Now, of course, we still have to win the general election. But as far as the Republican nominee, if Donald Trump gets involved, he'll win. But yes, when it comes to school choice in Mississippi, we need school choice. I was talking to a principal the other day, and he said to me, Dan, the reason why it's not that I'm against school choice. He said, my school is so good and so strong that if there was school choice, I would have hundreds of people lining up to come to my school, and I don't have the room for them. I don't have the room for all of the people that want to come to my school because our school, and it's a public school here in the South, it is such a strong school that they'll be lined up. But we need school choice, and we need it bad here in Mississippi.
Dan Carr, great to meet you. I look forward to our next conversation. Freedom Frontline, 1776.com is the website. We'll talk to Congressman Mike Ezell next here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. Super Talk, Mississippi.
In the Element Wealth Studios for Gerard Gibert, I'm Scott Sands. C Spire text line open 601-879-4395, and you can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Congressman Mike Ezell is joining us now on Super Talk Mississippi. Congressman, it's great to see you. I've got the state game on beside me where the Bulldogs are trailing 6-0 right now in the third. Southern Miss with a big game. Your alma mater later today.
Yep. Outstanding. I'll tell you this. I like your intro on your music there. That's my era of music.
That's all Rhino, man. He's putting together a playlist for me, I think. You get any?
Right. Well, he did a good job.
You get any sleep last night after the 1 a.m. meeting, House Rules Committee meeting?
I'll tell you this. Thank God I'm not on the Rules Committee right now. And so I did. I was pretty late last night, but yeah, up early this morning, out the door, ready to go to try to get this country rolling again.
So as of this morning, I wasn't able to find what the final changes to the package are. Do you know what changes have been made as part of President Trump's one big beautiful bill?
I don't, and I'm anxious to get it. I know that there's still a lot of conversation going on. I know rules are still meeting this morning, and so as soon as we can get them, we'll be getting something out, I'm sure, later at some point, working on that. But right now, I don't have the details, but I'm anxiously awaiting for them so that we can continue on with President Trump's agenda, so we can get things rolling again.
You say that, and I agree. And we've got to, if nothing else, we've got to prioritize extending and making the Trump tax cuts of 2017 permanent. That needs to be a priority. But isn't that one of the problems in the way this has been done? The 72-hour rule, single subject bills pretty much thrown out the window to get this package done. And don't get me wrong. Yeah. I think everything in this package needs to get done. I'd like Thomas Massey has said, and I'm not standing with him. I think there need to be more cuts. We need to cut spending as well as cutting taxes. But throwing everything into this, doesn't that create some problems long term?
Oh, absolutely. There's always going to be issues that come up. One thing I have learned up here in Washington, something that looks good on this particular subject will cause a problem on another subject over there. It's kind of like the folks that come up here with various asks and requests. When they come and make their pitch, it sounds like the best thing in the world, but when you start doing a little research on it, it don't always cut mustard. But we have got to get these tax cuts done. We got to get this stuff made permanent. There's so many things that are going on right now in the country. President Trump is delivering on his promises, and we have, as the Congress, has got to stand with him and make these things happen. Because, so far he's just done a phenomenal job working with everybody, and he tells it like it is. Like the cow eats the cabbage. And that's what I like about the president. He's very straightforward, and he don't mince his words, and he tells us what he's going to do, and he does it.
Well, Congressman, take us behind the scenes. He came to the Hill to talk to the House caucus, Republican caucus, to urge the passing of the bill. What was that like behind the scenes? What did he tell you guys?
It was pretty spicy there for a while. He called out various members during that time. Didn't hold his words back there. And what I'll say is that, it was pretty spicy there for a little while, but, sometimes you just got to lay it out there. Look, this is one person ain't going to get everything they want. You've got to be able to do a little give and take, so that we can get this thing done and get it signed and move forward. But that's what I like about the president. When he tells you something, he means what he's saying, and he does what he says, and I'm very proud to be supporting him. And, it was pretty spicy.
So at the end of the day, once we know everything that's in the bill, do you think the Republicans will come together and pass this? You've got such a slim majority in both the House and the Senate that you really can't afford to lose more than 2 or 3 votes.
Yeah, I believe it's going to happen. I'll tell you this. I cannot tell you how many times over the last several months that I've heard various people count Speaker Johnson out. He can't get this done. He's not going to get that done. And at the end of the day, he gets it done. And I tell you what, he's got the patience of Job, needs our prayers. He's a good man, and he's a good team builder. And even with some of the folks that are the hardest standouts, he seems to be able to get them to come across the finish line, and I feel good about it. And I know we've got to get this done at the end of the day so we can continue to support the president.
So the factions that you're battling against within your own party are the Freedom Caucus members who aren't happy with the limited number of cuts, and the other group of Republican lawmakers who want more SALT cuts, the state and local tax deduction, where I don't want to be paying for high taxes in New Jersey and New York and California and Massachusetts. I understand that their taxes are high, but that's the problem that they could fix in their own state and should fix in their own state. Don't make the rest of the country pay for their errors.
That's exactly right. And that's where you got to have some give and take. They got to understand that, the life that we live and the way that we conduct business here and the way that our, economy runs. We're not New York. We live in Mississippi because we want to live in Mississippi. And that's why we're here, and we're all different, but they've got to understand you've got to have some give and take, or we're never going to be able to make progress. And, like I say, there's always folks that have, no, we're not going to do this for that reason or that reason. But look, at the end of the day, we work for the American people, and we've got to take the whole country in our thoughts and the needs of the country, not just one individual group.
Congressman Mike Ezell here on Super Talk Mississippi. Congressman, the Attorney General, State's Attorney General, is on the border today. That's obviously been one successful initiative of President Trump's in the first 100 some odd days, is securing our border. Illegal crossings are down to record lows. Deportations are up. He's winning some court battles, although there's certainly an ongoing legal challenge there. This has been one of your focuses since you've taken office.
Yes, sir. You know, as a former sheriff and law enforcement officer, I know the way things work when it comes to border security and these bad actors that come across the border. President Trump has delivered on this promise, you know, and that's part of this bill that we're trying to get passed so we can continue to support our agents, our Border Patrol, provide more funding for them so they can get the job done, deporting these illegals, keep them from coming in the country. We can extend the border wall. We're going to provide more opportunities for our agents to do their jobs, which they were completely cut out of for the last 4 years under this terrible Biden administration. And now that we got a law and order president in there, we're going to get this done. And that was one of the big promises that, you know, and we heard that more and more and more over the last couple of years. You know, get these bad actors out of here. Stop this madness at the border. And, you know, all the fentanyl and all the drugs and the illegals coming across, killing Americans, you know. And so President Trump has delivered on this. We've got to get this done.
Congressman, I know it's kind of a breach of decorum for you to criticize your colleagues on the House floor, but you've got members of Congress who are trying to bust into detention facilities. You've got other members who are defending gang members. Your thoughts on your colleagues who have taken these outrageous stances publicly?
Well, I can tell you exactly what my thoughts are. It'd be the same thing if I was sheriff and I was standing on the line and somebody showed up and tried to bust up what we were doing. They would have had the handcuffs put on them right then and there. We wouldn't be waiting around to go sign charges on the local level. And this is absolutely ridiculous. You know, there's a way of making your point of something you don't agree with, but it's not about disrupting law and order in a facility that's operating under the United States government. I mean, that's just absolutely outrageous. And these people need to be charged for breaking the law. And I would stand behind that 100%.
Congressman, I don't want to put you on the spot on this, but there was an interesting moment yesterday with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and I'll have Tricia McLaughlin on with me later today. Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri was complaining about not receiving FEMA funds for disaster relief. We're dealing with some of the same issues in counties here in Mississippi. Yeah. Have you had any conversations with DHS or FEMA to get these relief funds back to Mississippi so the state can begin repair and cleanup?
100%. I tell you, since day one, I've been fighting with FEMA in this office, along with the Army Corps of Engineers. FEMA is nothing but one big wad of red tape. All they would rather do is take a municipality to court to try to stop them from getting their funding. They still owe the city of Biloxi over $100 million from Katrina. And so, absolutely, you know, this money needs to be released. In my opinion, the FEMA needs to be totally taken apart, put back together, get the money to the state so we can take care of our own people. We know what we need after a disaster. The federal government can't do nothing but screw it up. So, absolutely.
Yeah, I think President Trump obviously wants to disband FEMA, get the money back to the states who know where the issues are and can better quickly disperse those funds to the areas that need help. Mm-hmm. So why don't it seems like a majority of lawmakers don't want to get rid of FEMA. Why is that?
Well, because, you know, they may have some sort of interest in it. I don't know why. You know, it's kind of like just keep doing what we're doing because that's what we like. I totally disagree with that because what I have seen, the way they conduct themselves along the Mississippi Gulf Coast in my time as not only the congressman but as a sheriff and dealing with them right firsthand, you know, they would rather, it's just like so many of the mayors along the Mississippi Gulf Coast that have had issues with FEMA. Every one of those mayors can't be wrong. You know, and that's the way it looks like, and they continually drag us to court so they can drag something out so they won't have to meet up to their obligations. As long as I'm here, I'm going to fight them tooth, claw, and toenail.
Congressman Mike Ezell, it's great to see you again. Mississippi's fourth here on Super Talk Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands. Texas Tech Sun Belt Championship game at 12:30. Southern Miss to the top, right, Congressman?
That's right. Southern Miss to the top.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Afternoon, everybody. No! How you doing, Norm? What do you know? Not enough. Afternoon, everybody.
There, Norm?
Better give me a tall one in case I like it. Afternoon, everybody. Hey!
How's life treating you, Norm?
I just ran over its dog. What's up, Norm? My nipples. It's freezing out there.
What can I do for you, Norm?
Well, I am going to need something to kill time before my second beer. How about a first one?
You got it.
Norm has left the bar.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name.
George Wendt, star of Cheers. Norm died yesterday morning. He was 76. I haven't seen a cause of death yet, but his family says he died peacefully in his sleep at home. He was Norm on all 11 seasons of Cheers from 82 to 93. Rhino, this was a show that was popular before you, I'm sure, but it was a show we all watched at the time before we had all of the streaming options. I think it was every Thursday night on NBC. Nominated for 6 Emmys. Perhaps his second best career achievement was the SNL sketch from 91, The Superfans, where the Chicago guy who says the Bears said it all the time on that sketch and kind of took on a life of its own. But George Wendt also appeared on MASH, Seinfeld, Simpsons, Hot in Cleveland, Fresh Off the Boat, Fletch, one of my favorite movies of all time. Were you a fan? Did you watch Cheers? Did you watch it in reruns at all?
I've seen bits and pieces. You're right. It was a bit before my time, but I do remember watching the episode of Wings where Norm showed up at the bar at the airport, and my dad pointed it out to me, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
That's an unusual crossover. I remember Wings. I don't know that I watched it regularly. I do remember the show. I could probably... I don't know how much Cheers trivia I could answer, but I went to college at Spring Hill in Mobile, and I forget what course this was. It was a communications or a media course that I took, and all we did in this course for the entire semester was watch, an hour-long course. We would spend the first 25 minutes watching an episode of Cheers, and the next half of the class dissecting that episode of Cheers. Now, the whole, I guess, thought process was to discuss character development, plot development. I don't remember talking about camera angles or script writing or anything like that. I think it was mainly about plot and character development, and that was a great show to do because all of the characters were so deeply woven together, and there for a comedy series especially, and you had characters who came and went, so that became an important aspect of the class too. But every episode for an entire semester, or every course class for the entire semester, we would watch an episode of Cheers and then talk about it. I wish I could remember what the exam was like. That's passed me by. All I know is I paid like $15,000, and thank God I was on a scholarship. Otherwise, I'm not sure my money would have been well spent watching and dissecting episodes of Cheers. But a great course for early in the morning to take, right? I mean, What are you going to do today? You're going to watch a sitcom and then talk about it.
I had a couple electives they weren't TV show based, they were film based. You had Intro to Film, where we watched a bunch of different classics the professor picked out and analyzed them and deconstructed them and broke them down. And then the second semester was Film and Lit, which might have been one of my favorite courses because we would get a book usually. Sometimes it was a graphic novel or a comic or something that had been transferred to the silver screen. And we were analyzing not only the way the film was made, but how it adapted the original story. And it was fascinating to see the kind of behind the scenes of that, where you realize there's a ton of information in this book, and you've got to find the core principles that the author was trying to get, or you've got to take it in a different direction and look for what you want in this story to make your film out of. And it kind of changed the way I look at adaptations and different things like that. But it also exposed me to films that I probably never would have seen or never would have slowed down enough to watch, like some of the Akira Kurosawa films that have had a major impact on action films, even though they were made 50, 60 years ago.
So, yeah, those are films that I normally, you're right, would not gravitate towards. I'm not a guy that's going to the Marvel and Avengers type movies. But as that's the first thing I think of when you talk about graphic novel adaptations.
Yeah, the graphic novel one, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Was Strange World or something? It was a Steve Buscemi movie. And it's another one of those I never would have sat down and watched it if it weren't for this class. But it was fascinating to see how they took kind of a off-color graphic novel and turned it into not really an off-color movie, but kind of one of those awkward coming-of-age kind of movies with Steve Buscemi as this weird, I don't know, fulcrum in the whole story.
It's fascinating to me that I remember parts of my Cheers course, but couldn't tell you anything I learned in philosophy. So the things that stick with you out of college. Mississippi State continues to dig into the hole. They're now down 8-0 in the bottom of the fourth in the SEC tournament in Hoover, Alabama. I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert. It's Middays with Gerard from the Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Gerard is off today. He'll be live Friday at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby for the Memorial Day weekend. I'm Scott Sands. C-Spire text line open 601-879-4395, and you can also find me on X. I am at Scott Sands Media. Rhino State continues to dig a hole. They're now down 8-0 at the top of the fifth. I saw a stat pop up on the SEC network during the game that looks like Texas A&M is really just outperforming themselves. Normally they average, I think it was 4.2 runs per game. They're at 8 now, and we're only halfway done. I'm afraid if you're a Bulldogs fan, it's my fault. I think I am bringing your team bad luck. I apologize. I will try not to watch the Southern Miss game or the Ole Miss game if it continues to go this way. I'm not. Look, I'll cheer for the Alabama Crimson Tide. You know they're my team. If you've been listening to me fill in, I want to see the Bulldogs and Ole Miss and Southern Miss advance. It would be great to represent the state in the regionals, super regionals, in the tournament. But again, I apologize. Do you have a team? Do you have a dog in the sun? Are you cheering for anybody?
I mean, I was born and raised a Mississippi State Bulldog, but I haven't been keeping up with the team this year, so I can't really claim to have a dog in the hunt. I would be pleased if they would somehow come back and win this one, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Well, it would be a great story, too, after their coaching troubles as well, to be able to at least to advance, even if they can't make it the whole way, just to be able to advance and show how the players have rallied together after the turmoil in the coaching staff this season. I think that would be a terrific story.
Yeah, it seems like they've taken well to the lack of the distraction, because it seems like that was kind of weighing on them. They knew something was going to come, and they were just waiting for the other shoe to fall. And now that it has, and now that they've got a little bit of closure, they seem to have rallied a bit. But how much can you turn it around in such a limited amount of time?
Yeah, we'll continue to watch this, and I think we'll have at least the first inning or two of the Southern Miss game before the end of the show. We led this morning with the big story out of New Orleans, which is capturing national headlines. 10 inmates escaping from the Orleans Parish Justice System in New Orleans. They dug a hole behind a toilet in one of the cells. They scaled a wall and crossed onto I-10. But they seem to all still be in the New Orleans area. 5 of the 10 inmates have been recaptured. And I've seen several FBI experts talking about this on national news programs this morning that believe that the others may be holed up together somewhere in the New Orleans area, but there's obviously a safety concern about this. And there should be a safety concern about the condition of the Orleans Parish Jail, which has been under a consent decree for years now, and the lack of surveillance cameras, the lack of staff issues, and a drastic overhaul of security at that facility and facilities around the state are much needed at this point. But there's another aspect of this story that I find fascinating, and it might cause you to rethink next time you walk down Bourbon Street or through the French Quarter. For 2 years, the New Orleans Police Department has been secretly using facial recognition cameras to scan city streets, and that could be in violation of city rules. There's a Washington Post investigation into this, and it's kind of a big deal. So over 200 cameras run by a nonprofit called Project NOLA are watching New Orleans 24/7, and these aren't just any cameras. They're using facial recognition technology to spot potential suspects in real time, pinging police phones with names and locations like a high-tech wanted poster, but it's scanning everybody all the time. And here's the problem. There was a 2022 City Council ordinance that said police can only use facial recognition for specific violent crime suspects with strict oversight. They're supposed to send the still images to trained examiners in Baton Rouge and not run a citywide dragnet. And I'm curious how concerned you are as this technology continues to spread not just to big cities like New Orleans, but other cities where it could be used to capture violent suspects who are at large. Imagine having this, and they may use it to some degree in cities like Jackson or Biloxi now. Since 2023, Project NOLA's cameras have helped make at least 34 arrests, including 4 for nonviolent crimes like theft. And going back to the jail escape on May 16th, 10 inmates breaking out. One of them, Kendall Myers, was caught in the French Quarter thanks to these cameras spotting him under a car, which is a win, right? Here's the catch. Most of these arrests don't mention facial recognition in the police reports, and none were reported to the city council, which the ordinance does require, which is a serious lack of transparency. The whole Project NOLA, is led by a former police officer, Brian Lagarde, and they've got more than 5,000 cameras across the city funded by donations and local businesses. The Washington Post, this examination expose of Project NOLA mentioned three-legged bar, three-legged dog, a bar in the French Quarter. A friend of mine runs that. So far, they have built a database of 30,000 mugshots capable of identifying people from 700 feet away, even tracking their clothes. It's pretty powerful technology, but there's no formal contract with the city of New Orleans. So it begs the question of who is holding them accountable. The ACLU, who I'm not necessarily fans of, calls this a nightmare scenario, the government tracking us as we go about our lives. The New Orleans Police Department Chief Ann Kirkpatrick, who is facing her own criticisms, supposedly hit pause on this program in April after a captain flagged it as a potential violation. She told Project NOLA to stop the automated alerts that were going to the officers on the street until they comply with the law. But apparently, Lagarde's team at Project NOLA is still sending tips to police through calls and text messages, dodging the rules. And to add another twist to this whole story, some cameras may be made by Dahua, and I believe I'm pronouncing that name correctly, which is a Chinese company banned by Congress in 2018 over spying concerns. New Orleans police say they don't own the cameras, so they're in the clear with that aspect, but officers are actively asking Lagarde, the head of Project NOLA, for help, like in a phone snatching case last year. In that particular instance, a detective gave Project NOLA a still image. He used facial recognition to identify the suspect, added him to a watch list, and days later, cameras in the French Quarter spotted him and sent the alert to the police to arrest him, which, again, we're getting a criminal off the street, and that's good. But the police report didn't mention facial recognition. And the chief public defender for the city of New Orleans, Danny Engelberg, says that's a problem because without transparency, defendants aren't able to challenge the technology, which studies have shown can misidentify people of color, women, older people, and that raises the questions. Violent crime, reportedly, according to some of the numbers, are down, but you still have incidents like the New Year's Day attack on Bourbon Street, still fresh in all of our minds. Do we need this technology to keep us safe? I tend to think that we do, but I do recognize the fact that the way this has been implemented, at least in New Orleans, might be a step too far, especially when it's run by a private group with no oversight. The police chief and district attorney, Jason Williams, are talking to the city council about revising the ordinance, maybe even running their own facial recognition program with more clear rules, like not using it at protests. But for now, it feels like this could be a trust issue. Do we deserve to know when we're being watched? And is this a successful crime-fighting tool or an invasion of our privacy? I'm not committing crimes every day, so I don't care if there are cameras out there, but it still does raise privacy concerns, right? Rhino, I mean, how would you feel knowing that there are cameras trained on you every store you go into? Every store has their own private camera system, private security system, so we're being watched everywhere. But it's this lack of transparency that I believe I have the problem with, as well as obviously the concerns with China and how they may be infiltrating that technology and tracking perhaps public officials and using that for blackmail down the road. Some of the same security and privacy concerns that we obviously have with apps like TikTok. But I think it's an effective tool for law enforcement. And if it reduces crime, if it gets violent criminals like these 10 escapees off the street faster, that's a good thing. We just need to make sure that it's not being abused by private companies like Project NOLA or foreign governments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this on the C Spire text line, and we'll read some of your comments in just a second. 879-4395, area 601. Super Talk Mississippi. It's Middays with Gerard Gibert. I'm Scott Sands from the Element Wealth Studios.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on Super Talk Mississippi.
Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert. It's Middays on Super Talk Mississippi. Rhino, you brought up an interesting reminder for me during the break that facial recognition used in New York to capture Luigi Mangione. Although I don't remember exactly how they utilized it, but certainly they had his picture up everywhere within an hour of the shooting in New York City.
Yeah, it feels like that was either just idle scuttlebutt and rumor milling, or there was something being used for intelligence gathering that they didn't want the public to know about, because when he was first captured, there was a lot of talk about, facial recognition technology really cracked this case and helped us find him because he'd traveled 200 and something miles to Pennsylvania. And then very quickly that story shifted to, well, no, it was a McDonald's employee that recognized him from a wanted poster and the pictures they'd seen and called in a tip. So it's like, well, the official story is now the McDonald's employee, but where did all the facial recognition talk come from?
I mean, if you watch any of the TV shows like FBI or NCIS, you know that law enforcement has the ability to take surveillance footage, whether it be in real time or otherwise, to subpoena the footage from security cameras, ATM cameras, to backtrack the suspect's movements. But this is really a game changer to be able to track using facial recognition technology in real time and automatically send alerts to officers that a suspect, that somebody who's wanted, that a criminal is at such and such location right now, go get him. And again, I go back to the fact that I want these people off the streets to make our family and our friends safer. Thomas in Greenwood on the C Spire text line says, we've been living in 1984 for longer than you realize. Says, I haven't installed a wiretap in 24 years. You think they quit using them, or do you think everything you say is recorded and cataloged? We know the NSA has that technology. You say the wrong words on the phone, and you're going to get flagged. Whether anything happens with that or not, or whether your name goes on a list, I don't know that we'll ever know. But the NSA has that technology, and that's how they're tracking terrorists, which I want. Donald in Kokomo says, I'm a law-abiding citizen, so it's no issue to me. Sounds like it's getting people off the street that commit more crimes, which is true. And Mike in Gulfport said, if the cameras in Project NOLA are supported by local funding, it seems the people are in favor. It needs to be used for public safety. Just seems like another cop on the street. How many have been misidentified and jailed? Police departments should be in charge. Yeah, I think that's what I continue to default to, is that I don't want a private company to have access to that data and information, and I certainly don't want the Chinese to have access to that data and tracking technology, which, if it is a Chinese company that's that's building the cameras and developing the AI technology that goes into the facial rec and the tracking and the alerts, that could be used for nefarious purposes. And that's one of the concerns I have. And if they're going to use the facial recognition to apprehend a suspect, then the transparency does need to be there so you can properly defend yourself in court and know how you were caught so you can fight it. We certainly don't want the criminals off the street, but they have a right to know how they were caught. And that's the big change that I hope we see happen as this technology becomes more prevalent and more communities, more cities are able to afford the technology and roll it out and implement it. I think that technology is being developed to help law enforcement. I don't know how many communities in Mississippi are using the shot spotter technology to allow officers to respond faster to the scene of a potential shooting by using acoustic technology to identify where in a city shots may have been fired, triangulate that, and allow officers to respond faster.
It seems like it would be simple enough to just acknowledge in any report filed, as far as legally, that the identification was gained through facial recognition, and I don't see how that would be all that legally different than someone calling in a tip, hey, I saw this guy on such and such street corner, come pick him up. If the facial recognition people send the same tip, as long as you include that in the report, I don't see how that would be any problem as far as privacy, as long as it's not being abused and as long as there is the oversight.
That's the problem. It's the abuse and oversight.
Right, but if you don't have any evidence of people being arrested accidentally or mistakenly, then it hasn't been technically abused, has it? It might have been overused, but not really abused.
What if you're walking into one of the adult bars on Bourbon Street and a private company, you're a public figure or a business leader, a corporate CEO, and they've got your picture on the watch list for that AI technology, and it pops up you walking into a strip club on Bourbon Street, and they pull that footage. They know you're married. They know maybe you're a church leader, and they use that to blackmail you in the business world, or if you're an elected official, and the private company is using that information. That's where the privacy concern comes into play for me, and some great comments coming in, too. Of course, the saying, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And another comment along the lines of, hey, I'm not breaking the law, but what happens when the government decides something normal is illegal and they've got this technology in place? And, of course, we've all got our smartphone right by our side 24 hours a day listening to everything that we say. And that's also a privacy concern. So we're surrounded by this technology already. how are private companies, how are the foreign governments using this information to profit, to spy on us, to blackmail us? Maybe not now, but down the road. And as much as I want law enforcement to have as much technology as they can to keep our streets safe, it's certainly ripe for abuse at some point, whether it's being abused now in the court system or whether it's abused by private companies and foreign governments down the road. We need to figure out ways to let law enforcement utilize the technology without opening it up for abuse. And I don't know what that answer is. But like we were talking about at the beginning of the show with the two-factor authentication, just to get into our email, there's got to be a happy medium there somewhere with the technology.
Yeah, and I feel like with the blackmail example, while it would be potentially devastating personally to the person being blackmailed, blackmail is illegal, and I feel like the operating procedure for blackmail in today's day and age is you're going to have to come out and admit what you did wrong, but you're also going to point the finger at the person blackmailing you. Because what you did might not be legally wrong, what they did is. So although you're going to have to pay the piper for the personal repercussions
for your personal business,
for your personal problems,
what you're doing.
If you were doing something that could potentially get you blackmailed, and well, maybe you shouldn't have been doing it.
Well, this and again, imagine the government abuse, and I know that the police chief and others involved with Project NOLA are talking about making sure that these surveillance videos are not being used at protests. But what happens, as one of the people on the C Spire text line said, we're living in 1984. What if the government, regardless of what party is in charge at any given time, is using this technology to see who their dissenters are and using that at some point against you? I mean, we've seen how quickly, and I don't want to go down the whole January 6th rabbit hole here, but we saw how cameras and surveillance video was used to apprehend a number of January 6th participants.
Yeah, I don't want the government necessarily in charge of the cameras. I think they should be able to use information provided to them. Well, like in the case of New Orleans, where it's a private entity.
But do we want the private company having access to that information for the same reason?
I mean, just like in the example of Thomas giving us,
we either use the technology for good or we don't. Every little bit of technology, and I realize that there has been corruption and abuse in law enforcement, a few bad seeds in every department for even before this technology existed. And you're not gonna root it all out completely. But the more this technology becomes available, the more open it is for that abuse at some point. And let's hope it doesn't happen, but it likely will. Until then, until we can figure it out, especially when you've got 5 violent offenders escaping from a New Orleans jail on the street, let's use this to find them and apprehend them, get the gang members who are in the country illegally off the street. These are all ways that the technology can be used for good, but let's figure out ways to prevent it from being abused in the future. And I don't have those answers. If I did, I would not be doing a silly radio show with you, Rhino. Not that I don't love you. But I should ask, during the break, I'll ask AI how we can implement the technology without its abuse and see what our artificial intelligence, see what Grok or ChatGPT tells me about this. State Rep Kevin Felcher will join us in just a second. Changes in the NFL that I want to get into as well, all coming up on Super Talk Mississippi. Middays with Gerard Gibert. I'm Scott Sands. Find me on X at Scott Sands Media.
Mississippi.
Is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on Super Talk Mississippi.
I asked Grok AI how he could avoid abuse of facial recognition and artificial intelligence, but still be able to capture criminals. And it actually gave me a pretty detailed 10-point plan to roll out. I'm not going to get into all of this. We don't have the time. But Grok suggests prioritizing oversight, transparency, and community trust while allowing police to use effective tools proven useful in cases like we were talking about without compromising civil liberties. Budget constraints can be mitigated by leveraging existing oversight bodies and federal grants, ensuring cost-effective implementation. It has some really great suggestions that still don't answer the question. As we were talking about off the air, at the end of the day, you can put all of these plans in place and have all of these regulations on how it can be implemented and used, but all it takes is one guy, one gal sitting in an office somewhere with access to the technology to completely abuse it. So that's where the breakdown always seems to happen. So I don't know what the answers are, but I find the story of the facial recognition use in New Orleans to capture these inmates who escaped last week completely fascinating. Still a lot to come on Middays with Gerard Gibert today. I'm Scott Sands. Clay Williams, the executive director of the Gulfport Biloxi International Airport, will join us next hour. Any concerns about flying with all of these ATC breakdowns lately? And Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, next hour as well. But first, we're joined by State Rep Kevin Felsher here on the Scott Sands Show, filling in for Gerard Gibert. It's nice to meet you, Kevin. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, good to see you and good to speak to a fellow Coastian.
Absolutely. I went to high school at St. John in Gulfport, now a part of the St. Patrick's system on the coast, and I miss the coast every day. I still talk to friends down there all the time.
Well, we miss you too, and we hope with the elimination of the state income tax that you'll find us more appealing than Ohio and come back and live here.
Ohio's working on it. I don't know if they'll get it done in the next couple of years, but they are working on it. And you're right. I mean, I've talked about this with some of your colleagues over the last few months, filling in for Gerard and Richard Cross here on SuperTalk, that it's not only a way to boost the economy, but a way to attract businesses and people to Mississippi, which is so crucial for the state's success.
Absolutely, and not to mention your dollar goes further in Mississippi than just about any other state. So our cost of living is really low, and the quality is on up there. So it is a good place for you to come and live, and we hope you'll consider coming back.
Meanwhile, send me some crawfish.
Yeah, I heard you, Representative Owen, asked for that. I might make that happen.
You're quite busy. You're the vice chair of the Public Health and Human Services Committee of the state legislature, and you're working on some important legislation that you've authored that I don't think gets the attention it deserves. I mean, mental health in Mississippi, around the country, I believe has gone dramatically underserved and has contributed to a lot of the problems that we see in the headlines, a lot of the problems that get the most attention, whether it be crime, unemployment, homelessness, drug abuse. Those are all tied into improving the mental health of our society today.
Absolutely. If you look at the statistics, I think it's something like 80% of homeless folks have some form of mental illness, and probably the same along the lines of substance abuse. And working with Chairman Creekmore and Wendy Bailey, director of our mental health, we have tackled civil commitments. We have instituted the 988 suicide hotline. We've implemented some task force to look at mental health within our first responder community. So we're leading the charge on that, and it's something that we're really passionate about.
So what improvements have you seen in Mississippi with regards to mental health?
So our commitments have gone drastically down for the better. Our commitments to our state hospital, our commitments, the folks being housed in jails. One of Chairman Creekmore and myself, what we worked on was ensuring, mental illness is not a crime. You shouldn't be in jail for being mentally ill. And it was being used more than it should have been. And what we made sure of is it's used as the last alternative. That is working. Our commitments, our commitments that are being housed in jail have dropped drastically, and we want that number down to really zero. That's one of the biggest things we're proud of. Also instituting that 988 suicide crisis hotline, and we have some other investments we're doing. We just opened a forensic lab for those needing mental health forensic analysis. a place to house folks in a timely fashion. So it's all one big safety net of the mental health system, and we're working on making that better each and every day here in the legislature.
So many homeless, so many drug addicts do wind up in jail for various reasons, but getting them treatment is an expensive measure. And I know in Ohio, I'm sure the same is true in Mississippi. There just aren't enough beds to house people who need this kind of assistance. And it's a costly proposition. How do you pay for it?
It is, and what's happened is the feds have shifted the responsibility to the state and the local governments, but they've not sent the funds to follow. So our states and our counties and our municipalities are shouldering the burden, and quite frankly, we're doing the best we can.
I think the responsibility does belong to a certain degree with the states. You're closer to the problem in your communities. You know what areas need more help. But again, you do have to pay for it, and obviously the state is talking about budget cuts, cutting the state income tax, all things that will affect how much money you have to spend on these issues.
We have, and that's why we took a measured approach with HB1, which eliminates our state income tax. It's phased in, it has triggers, but it allows us to be prudent. And we do have some good reserves in our rainy day fund and our general fund and our CapEx expenditure fund should we receive some cuts at the federal level. But we hope that's not the case. We hope that those who need Medicaid and who qualify for the program who are citizens of the United States will have Medicaid.
Yeah, I think education plays an important role in this as well. We were talking about school choice earlier this morning, and I think a lot of this can start at the elementary school level and through the educational system, recognizing perhaps mental illness, areas of mental crises, and being able to address it at an earlier age before the problem becomes bigger.
That's an excellent point, Scott. And what we've been working on in our committee is trying to get a grant for something that's called the Hope Squad or Peer Helpers. And these are groups that come into the school and allow the actual students to really lend peer support when they identify, or even on a proactive measure, reach out to their fellow students who might be being bullied or suffering from some form of depression. At a peer level, these organizations are making a huge dent in the problem, and we're trying to make it to where every school in Mississippi will eventually have access, if they'd like it, to something like the Hope Squad or Peer Helpers.
You know, I could go off on a complete tangent about mental health in high schools and with elementary school kids. I think social media plays an important factor in that. We could take that entire tangent, but you've got to have the teachers in place and the counselors in place at the school level who can help hold their hand through that process and get them help. And I don't know that many schools, especially in some of the rural communities, have those resources available.
Again, you're right. Many schools don't have a counselor. My school district, Biloxi, is fortunate, and they do have counselors. Many of our coastal schools do have counselors, but many others throughout the state do not. This is where something along the lines of Peer Helpers or Hope Squad could step in and help fill the void, because it includes teachers and staff, but it also includes the students. So it's more of a holistic approach. And again, it's having great results around the nation.
We're talking to State Rep Kevin Felcher here on Super Talk Mississippi. A lot of talk about the special session and getting all of these things done. Fill us in on the latest on that. I got to be honest, I haven't seen the latest progress in the last few days. What's the latest word on what the plan is in the state legislature?
Well, I have no official progress report. We don't get those, but
that's discouraging. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, understand. So, but what we do here is, like everyone else, we hear chatter and we hear different things, and if what I'm hearing is correct, hopefully we're near a deal and we may see a special session in the next couple of weeks, something in that time frame. Again, that's not fact, but it's hopeful that we can do that, and that's what I'm hearing.
Mississippi State trailing Texas A&M in the SEC tournament. Kevin, who do you think is going to make it further, Southern Miss or Ole Miss?
To the top, Southern Miss.
Teed that one up for you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's nice to meet you. State Rep Kevin Felcher. Middays with Gerard Gibert here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Up a Mississippi.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On Super Talk Mississippi.
In the Element Wealth studio for Gerard Gibert, I'm Scott Sands. I'll be back here tomorrow as well. Gerard will be live at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby Friday to help us get ready for the Memorial Day weekend. Checking the stock market here at midday, the Dow is down almost 300. NASDAQ is up about 90. S&P is slowly climbing its way to a break-even point, kind of a mixed day across all sectors. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media, joined now by Clay Williams, Executive Director of the Gulfport Biloxi International Airport. Clay, it's nice to have you on. Thanks for your time. He's not next segment. Oh, it is next segment. I got ahead of myself, Rhino. Remember when I started to fill in for people and I told you to have the buzzer ready when I would screw up? I got ahead of myself here. Clay's on next segment. I apologize for that. You might want to pull that buzzer out. The NFL yesterday voted to allow their players to participate in flag football, which is going to be one of the events at the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028. Team owners voted to allow their players to participate. Roger Goodell said that there's been a tremendous amount of interest among players to compete for their countries. I think this is going to be very cool to watch. I don't know who the other countries would put up against. Imagine, like, I don't know, a Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts throwing the ball around. Imagine the air raid coming to the Summer Olympics. This, I think, will be really fun to watch in the same way that the Dream Team dominated basketball when professional players were allowed to participate. And I've got a whole problem. I don't know that this is a sport that the college athletes should play instead of the pros. But, Rhino, I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I want to say there are some smaller leagues that have tried to pick up American football, as they call it. Like, I want to say there's a small league in England, which is surprising considering they have so many soccer teams. And then I don't think the European League is still going, but there was obviously...
The NFL is pushing it with all of these overseas games. They're trying to get American football to catch on. I do know, and it's weird that I know this, but I follow a couple of teams in the Italian Football League, which these guys, I've met a lot of them. They actually play their Italian Bowl, their Super Bowl for the Italian Football League, and of all places, Toledo, Ohio this year. And these are guys that are paid next to nothing, that work in construction or chefs in a restaurant by day, but love the sport of American football so much that they go and play professionally. And every team in the Italian Football League is allowed one American player on their team. It's an odd rule, but the sport is catching on. I think who is not there's an author who wrote a book about this, Bowling for Pizza. is the name of the book, and the name of the author's name escapes me right now, but the Italian Football League.
John Grisham.
Grisham. I knew it was, I don't know why that name escaped me. Wrote Bowling for Pizza, and that's a book about the Italian Football League. The other thing the NFL is voting on, I believe, today is the Green Bay Packers proposal to ban the tush push, which, look, I love football. It's my favorite sport to watch. It's a boring play to watch, but it's been effective for teams like the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you're the Packers, if you don't like the tush push, if you're not able to defend against it, perhaps you should work on your defense a little bit more rather than outlawing it. I have not heard, and maybe I've missed it, player concerns about their safety, because I'm sure it's a play that could probably open themselves up to become more prone to injuries because of the violence and the physical nature of that play. And it's, again, it's a horrible play to watch, but it's been very effective. And if you've got a short yardage situation, if you're on the goal line and you've got the player personnel to run it in from there, why not have that in your arsenal as a play that you can call? I think outlawing the play is making the sport more wimpy, as we've seen in so many other rules that the NFL has passed.
Have you seen
especially their kickoff rule?
Have you seen the craziest suggestion for player safety?
No, I haven't.
I don't think this will ever be implemented, but I have seen it suggested by a couple different people that since football has its roots in rugby and it developed from the sport of rugby, that it could possibly return to its roots in short yardage situations where you have the red zone starts at the 20 and the scrum zone would start at the 10. So if the ball is placed inside the 10-yard line, you no longer have a neutral zone. In fact, everybody has to lock up like a rugby scrum.
That would be interesting. The rule I think that they should implement now that the UFL, the USFL and the XFL have merged and as part of the NFL is that the best team in the UFL at the end of the season should advance to the NFL, and the worst team in the NFL should be relegated to the UFL.
There you go.
That's the rule I would like to see implemented. Mike in Gulfport says if you've ever played an O-line position, the tush push is far from boring. I can imagine. Never played the O-line. I did play D-line. Should have, because I should have played O-line, I guess. All right. Next time I screw up, Rhino, you don't have to whisper in my ear. You can call.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
How y'all doing? I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard today. A little behind the scenes. Rhino has the ability to talk to me in my ear, and when I got ahead of myself on the show rundown, he whispered, no, that's next segment. So, Rhino, again, feel free to call me out in public. I don't get embarrassed too easy. I'm surprised that's the first screw-up of the day, but just let me know. You can call me out in public. It's fine. We are now joined by Clay Williams, Executive Director of the Gulfport Biloxi International Airport. Clay, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure. Glad to be a part of the show. Thanks, Scott.
I love the new terminal at Gulfport Biloxi Airport. I've flown in there a few times. In fact, I used to fly into New Orleans for business meetings, and because I've got so many friends still on the coast, I began to fly into Gulfport so I could spend a day or two on the coast. And the new airport looks amazing. Great job. I think it's been open now, a couple of years at least?
So actually, the expanded and new terminal facility was opened in 2008, 2009 time frame.
Has it been that long?
We appreciate you flying with us. It has been.
You're getting a lot of traffic through Gulfport.
We really are. We're actually very fortunate. We have a number of major carriers that are operating here at the airport. We have American flights to Charlotte and Dallas. We have United flying to Houston. We have Delta flying to Atlanta. We have Breeze Airways, a low-cost carrier, which is our newest operator in the market. Actually started flying in January of 2024. They're flying twice a week on Fridays and Mondays to both Tampa and Las Vegas. two exciting destinations for us. And then Breeze has just recently, in the last few months, started service to Orlando International Airport, flying on Thursday and Sunday. In addition to those routes and carriers that I referenced, Scott, we also have a very robust charter program from Sun Country Airlines. They're headquartered out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and two of our casino partners, MGM Resorts, has Beau Rivage here on the Gulf Coast, and then Caesars Entertainment, El Dorado, has Harrah's Gulf Coast, and they're flying charter flights in and out of the market daily. Beau Rivage brings in passengers from 90 cities throughout points across the United States.
So how much traffic do you get? How many flights in and out do you see on an average day, and how many people are passing through the airport on the coast?
Yeah, so we have, very grateful for those that are utilizing the Gulfport Biloxi International Airport for both business and leisure. Last year, we had 850,000 passengers coming and going from Gulfport Biloxi Airport. On a daily basis, we have approximately 15 to 16 flights a day from the commercial air carriers.
So when I first reached out to you, Clay, it was as the Real ID was being implemented, and I admit I still haven't gotten mine. I don't have to fly anytime soon, but I still don't have my Real ID, and that has been delayed yet again. They've been trying to roll this out for, I think, 10 years now, or maybe longer than that, 20 years almost. Any issues so far getting people on their flight because they don't have the right ID?
No, you're absolutely right, Scott. It has been a work in progress by the Department of Homeland Security, and they did implement the Real ID requirement on May the 7th. We really have not seen any issues to date here at Gulfport Biloxi. I'll say this, the Mississippi Department of Public Safety has done a really nice job of ensuring that our residents in the state are Real ID compliant. We have approximately 97% of our citizenry is Real ID compliant, is what I understand from the Department of Public Safety. And one of the things that I'll note from TSA's standpoint is when someone's coming through the security checkpoint, there are a number of forms of ID that are acceptable. So if you do not happen to have the gold star in the right-hand corner of your Mississippi driver's license and you're flying from Gulfport, Biloxi, or whatever state you might be traveling in and out of the airport, you can utilize your passport. A military ID is sufficient, as well as a global entry card, trusted traveler network card. And so there are a number of other forms of ID that are acceptable. And again, if you don't have it, you're subject to additional screening. But we've been fortunate so far here at the airport that it's really gone smoothly with our partners with the Transportation Security Administration.
Yeah, I was blown away by that number. More than 97, 98% of Mississippians have the Real ID now. I think the number nationally is in the 80% range. I myself, one of those 20% that has not upgraded yet. Need to do that before my birthday next month when I have to go get my license renewed. But I think that the implementation certainly continues to face delays, but the additional security, I think, hopefully, will make travel smoother in the future.
Yeah, it's an enhanced security measure that the Department of Homeland Security has had a goal of getting that implemented. And one thing I'll say also for Gulfport Biloxi Airport, with our partnership with the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, if someone happens to come to the airport to board an airplane and they do not have a Real ID or another acceptable form, there is a driver service bureau located on the first floor of the terminal building where someone can present their boarding pass and they'll have an opportunity to renew their driver's license here if need be.
You cannot take your driver's test on the tarmac, though. That's still outlawed.
We don't recommend that.
Clay Williams is Executive Director of the Gulfport Biloxi International Airport here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Are you hearing, Clay, are people worried about flying these days? On an almost daily basis for the last couple of weeks, and really this year, we're hearing stories about about either a plane crash, even though the actual numbers of crashes is down. They've been in the headlines, and now almost daily we're hearing about air traffic control issues out of Newark and other major airports. You've got a relatively new terminal. I'm sure you've got some of the newer technology there. Are flyers out of Gulfport Biloxi concerned about their safety in flight?
Well, I'll say that air travel is still far and away the safest form of travel that you have. You're more likely to be involved in an incident driving to the airport than you are actually flying. The FAA, our partners there at the Federal Aviation Administration, they handle 45,000 average daily flights across the United States, and then you have about 2.9 million passengers that are flying in this country each and every day. Those are numbers that we get from nationwide checkpoints at airports throughout the country. And so think about this. There's about 16 million flights that are handled annually by the FAA, and then again the 2.9 million passengers daily. And so again, very safe form of travel, but as you point out, Scott, there is a need for the FAA to modernize the air traffic control system and upgrade it. There's been a multi-billion-dollar proposal that's been presented by the current administration to Congress. And that multi-billion-dollar proposal looks at everything from upgrades to communication systems to radar to hiring of more air traffic controllers. I think what we've seen is FAA has noted that there are 14,000 air traffic controllers in the country, and they hired about 1,800 last year, but you still got a shortfall of approximately 3,000 that they're trying to fill that. So I think with the enhanced radar and communications upgrades that are being proposed, you've got a plan that's been put forward to build new towers at various airports. And so I think all of that will certainly go a long way to modernizing and upgrading the nation's air traffic control system. We're fortunate here at Gulfport Biloxi Airport that we don't have the crowded airspace, Scott, that you've got in other major metropolitan markets. I know you've seen and read a lot about some of the issues that have happened in the Newark, New Jersey area. But you've also, here at Gulfport Biloxi, we're fortunate that we had some support from our congressional delegation at the time, and the FAA has a very modern state-of-the-art tower at Gulfport Biloxi. It was commissioned in 2012. There's the ability to expand it and also handle any new upgrades that the FAA decides to put forward from an air traffic control standpoint.
And I realize you don't oversee the FAA. You're in charge of the airport. Have there been any issues at the Gulfport Biloxi Airport?
No, we've actually we have a very from the airport standpoint, we have a rigorous inspection program for our pavements, both our taxiways and runways, and those are inspected multiple times a day. And we have an airport capital improvement plan where we're investing money. Obviously, a lot of that's grant money provided through the FAA in improving the runways and taxiways here at the airport. So we feel like we have a safe airfield, and we have a modern state-of-the-art air traffic control tower here for our size market. But again, look forward to seeing what Congress does with the proposal that's been put forward.
I remember flying out of Hattiesburg one time, and they have a truck that chases deer off the runway. That didn't make me feel very safe, but it was fun to watch. Clay Williams, Executive Director of Gulfport Biloxi International, flygpt.com. Look forward to my next trip to the coast and to your airport, Clay. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Whoa, come on, California. And I know, baby.
C-Spire text line open at 601-879-4395 in the Element Wealth Studios. It's Middays with Gerard Gibert. I'm Scott Sands. Rhino, did you know that the baristas are on strike at Starbucks in some parts of the country, and they have been for a few days now.
Yeah, I've seen that, sadly.
2,000 union baristas, 150 stores as of yesterday. The Workers United Union, which represents more than 11,000 Starbucks workers in America, are doing rolling one-day strikes across the country because Starbucks implemented a dress code. Normally we see strikes over pay. This is over dress code. It's really about the color of their shirts. I think maybe this is trivial. And if you work at a Starbucks, I'm not saying that you don't have a point. Maybe you can't afford a bunch of new shirts. Maybe the company should provide the uniform. I've not worked in a restaurant setting, I'll be perfectly honest, so I don't know how that works. Have you ever worked as a server or at a fast food place? I don't know if like McDonald's provides their employees with the Golden Arches shirts that they wear. If you're going to require a dress code, you would think that you would provide the shirt. So I can understand their point to a certain extent, but I think that this uniform, as I understand it, is just wear a black shirt. Probably because a lot of the employees may have been wearing some more outrageous items from their personal wardrobe. So I can understand wanting a little bit of uniformity across every Starbucks. You walk into a Starbucks, you know what to expect from the coffee, you know what to expect from your Danish, your muffin. You should know what to expect from the workers. Well, that seems to be a valid point from the corporate side, right?
Yeah, I've never worked in fast food, but I did work at Applebee's as a server, and we had to provide our own uniform that fit dress code, had to have the special non-slip shoes for walking through the kitchen and not falling and busting our butts. And yeah, I really don't see a problem with requiring a dress code to work in food service.
At the last radio station where I worked, we radio stations notoriously, we used to give away T-shirts all the time. And we had to buy our own polo shirts and baseball caps with our station logos on them. I found that odd, but you get a discount for $20 and you buy a shirt. I don't know. Maybe I took it too much for granted. But it didn't seem too extreme, but I didn't have to wear that logoed shirt every day all the time either, only for certain public appearances, so I didn't need to buy 10 of them. There could be a difference there. The new dress code, which took effect last week, requires solid black short or long sleeve crew neck button-up or collared shirts, which is a change from their previous policy that allowed a range of dark colors and patterns. The company said, Starbucks says, they're also making a new line of company-branded T-shirts available to partners who will receive 2 at no cost, including partner network options. If you don't wear khaki, black, or denim pants, you could be sent home. The union workers say this is a form of discipline. We're getting in trouble because the manager is interpreting the dress code in a way that continuously moves the goalpost. One user on Reddit said that they were sent home over their permanent dental retainer and told not to return until you can get the blue permanent retainer in their mouth removed or get a clear retainer. That seems a little bit like overreach to me. The black shirts and the khaki pants, I understand, right? And provide more than 2 shirts, especially for workers who are there every day, because you're going to work up a sweat and you're going to spill coffee over whatever you're wearing. You shouldn't have to do laundry every day to keep your job. But I can understand some of those aspects of it as well. But I certainly understand the company, Starbucks, wanting all their employees to look presentable and uniform at every Starbucks location around the country. Excuse me as I wrangle my cat off my desk. I apologize. a little distracted. That doesn't forgive me for getting the time wrong, but earlier in this show. But That was a little distracting there. The rest of the walkout, I think, is going to wind up being pointless. But Starbucks seems to cave to these kind of tactics. So we'll probably see a compromise along the way. Provide them with more T-shirts. Let them wear jeans or whatever kind of pants they want, and just get on with the business. And I've got nothing against Starbucks, but I support local coffee shops whenever I can. Who usually don't have dress codes, which is a plus if you're going to be a barista there. Seems like last time I was on with you, Rhino, we talked about Jordan Hudson and Bill Belichick. Have you heard the latest rumors that have been out for the last day or two that they are engaged now?
No. That was quick.
She has apparently told at least one of her friends that they are engaged. There's been no confirmation along the way. I just hope for Coach Belichick's sake that there is a prenup involved in this process, because it could this just is weird. If they're happy, they're happy. Was the conclusion I came to last time we talked about this. If they're I'm not going to judge their age gap relationship, but to be engaged at this point so quickly just seems odd, and further leads me to believe that she is after his money, and I hope that he is well protected. In so many ways, actually. If your kid is graduating this month with certain degrees, let them know that it's important work, but they should start to save money. Fortune.com just put out a list of the top 10 college degrees that earn the least amount of money straight out of school. Can you guess which college degree would earn you the least amount of money after graduation?
Knee-jerk reaction would be gender studies.
I don't see gender studies on the list. At the top, it's a foreign language, like majoring in French. That'll earn you about $40,000 a year. Not much you can do, I guess, with that. The CIA and NSA always need interpreters for languages like Arabic, but you're a French major, a Spanish major, I guess you could teach. Some of the other degrees that are likely to earn you less than $42,000 a year, which is plays into the whole student loan repayment debate. Theology and religion are number 10 on the list. Social services, biological sciences like a lab tech or a research assistant, general ed, family and consumer sciences, early childhood education, anthropology, performing arts, and general social sciences, which would lead you to a job like a youth counselor or a teacher's aide. They noted that new grads with a degree in STEM, science, technology, math, tend to make a little bit more than everything else. So all the high schools and colleges around the country are in graduation time. Did your school, Rhino, have did your class have a graduation song?
Oh yeah, we had that awful Vitamin C Friends Forever song with the girl with the crazy orange hair, which was crazy at the time, and now it seems almost normal compared to the purple and blue shades we see.
Colleen Fitzpatrick, Vitamin C. That song was huge that May when that came out. Our class, even though we were, it'll make it sound like I'm older than I am, was Stand By Me, the Benny King song.
There you go.
But some of the other graduation songs that are making it out this year, I've never even heard of some of these, like Good Life by Kanye West. I'm sure I've heard that on the radio, but I can't place it.
Well, at least
Black
it's
Eyed
not
Peas,
a
I
new
got
song.
a feeling. Yeah, I'm surprised Kanye is still getting any sort of recognition. Journey's Don't Stop Believin' is still popular with graduating classes. Queen, Don't Stop Me Now. Natasha Bedingfield, Unwritten. Lady Gaga, The Edge of Glory. Good Riddance by Green Day. That seems like a thumb to the school that you're leaving. Panic at the Disco, Hey Look Ma, I Made It. And the top graduation song for the class of 2025, believe it or not, is the Alice Cooper classic School's Out. It's out for good. It's just not out for summer. but it's still popular. Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, will join us next. Middays with Gerard Gibert from the Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Call up Trudy on the telephone.
Score is final now. Mississippi State just dropped to Texas A&M 9-0. I forgot to look up the Southern Miss score. I think they're playing Texas State right now. Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi. Tricia McLaughlin is joining me now. She's Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security. Tricia, I've known you for years. You and Secretary Noem are doing a bang-up job. Congratulations on everything you've achieved so far in the first 100-some-odd days in office.
Oh, thank you, Scott. I'm proud to serve the American people, and under Secretary Noem and President Trump, they've had some historic victories, and thanks for getting out there and speaking the truth.
You had a press conference earlier today. Let's talk about some of it involves a lot of the legal challenges the administration is facing to deporting these criminal illegals that are in this country.
Yeah, Scott, we faced a historic number of injunctions in this administration from activist judges. This is just the latest example. We had a third country deportation flight that held 8 individuals. Scott, these are the worst of the worst individuals. There's murderers, child rapists, even an individual who raped a individual who is mentally disabled. Really disgusting. And the fact that this Massachusetts judge is trying to step in and intervene and take these people back to our country, it just shows exactly who they are. The contrast is incredibly stark. Scott, you have Secretary Noem and President Trump and our brave ICE enforcement officers who are working every single day to get these vicious criminals off of American streets. And then on the other hand, you have these activist judges who are happy to turn a blind eye to these crimes and get these people back on American soil.
You've got this latest judge is from Massachusetts. We've got more than 10 million illegals in this country, and President Trump has secured our border in record time. I don't believe anybody expected him to get it done as quickly as he has, but we still have all of these millions of illegals in this country, many of them dangerous criminals and gang members that we need to get out and send back to their home country. And these judges are making it that much more difficult to make our country safe.
It's so true, Scott. I mean, you heard about the latest at Delaney Hall Detention Facility, which is a detention hall in Newark, New Jersey that holds the worst of the worst. They hold MS-13 gang members, known terrorists, murderers, convicted rapists, really disgusting people. And yet there are 3 members of Congress and even the mayor there who are calling for these people to be allowed out off of onto American soil. So these are the kind of activists that we're fighting every single day. And by the way, Scott, when these politicians and activist judges continue to vilify our men and women in uniform, there's real consequences. Our ICE enforcement officers are facing a 400% increase in assaults against them. It's disgusting. It's un-American, and it must be stopped.
Congresswoman McIver charged with assaulting 2 of those agents in New Jersey. What should happen to her, in your opinion?
I'm going to leave that to the DOJ, but I think an example needs to be set. If you lay a finger on our ICE enforcement officers, there has to be repercussions. And just to give viewers the facts there, these 3 members of Congress, as a vehicle was entering the detention facility and the gates were open, they took that opportunity and stormed that detention facility, making it to the first security checkpoint. So they trespassed, they broke the law, and they're trying to say that they broke the law in the name of oversight, but it's completely false. We have proper procedures, proper channels to actually conduct oversight and take one of these tours. And putting our law enforcement, the detainees, and our staff at these detention facilities is just unacceptable.
Kilmara Brego Garcia has become one of the poster children for for Democrats in favor of keeping these criminal gang members in our country for people like Senator Van Hollen. What is this? Just the public being misled by people like Senator Van Hollen as to who these people really are and how dangerous they are to the rest of us?
It's a little bit shocking that this is the hill that Senator Van Hollen and many Democrats have decided to die on. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is anything but an innocent man and an innocent father, as the media would have you believe. He was involved in human trafficking, in labor trafficking. His own wife has testified that he hit her, that he grabbed her, bruised her, pulled off her shirt, was threatening her and her children, was detaining her against her will. And oh, by the way, he was arrested with other members of MS-13. He was decked out in MS-13 symbols with drugs and rolls of cash. This is not an innocent individual. And if that's who they want to lionize, celebrate, glorify, then go for it, because who we're going to glorify and protect is the American people and the American victims, Scott.
We're talking to Tricia McLaughlin. She's Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Mississippi is not really getting all of the headlines that other states have, but there's still a problem with illegal immigration in Mississippi. You've got I-10 and other highways that run through the state that turn it into a highway for drug trafficking, for human trafficking. The state, however, unlike other municipalities, cooperating with agencies like ICE to do something about it and protect the people of Mississippi.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Tren de Aragua, for example, they are one of the most vicious gangs in this country, human trafficking. And there's a new group that's coming up and emerging. It's called Anti-Tren. It's a rival to Tren de Aragua, and we're finding that they're really exploiting more rural and country areas because there's not as much law enforcement present. In these early days of these gangs, as we work to thwart them, we know that they become more and more violent because they're trying to establish themselves, establish their turfs against other gangs. So it's a real problem out there, and that's what Secretary Noem, President Trump, and our brave law enforcement officers who are on the front lines of combating this kind of violent criminal activity every single day.
The state attorney general, Lynn Finch, is actually on the border today. Mississippi is one of the few states that now has the authority to enforce some federal immigration law. I believe it's part of the ICE's Section 287 program. How can you work with Mississippi and other states to extend the resources that ICE and DHS have to protect us and to round up these gang members and criminal illegals?
Well, under the Trump administration, we've established 562 agreements under the authority that you mentioned, 287G, which really means deputizing these local and state law enforcement officers to conduct immigration enforcement. It's a very powerful tool. We've seen Florida has used it miraculously. They have, under Operation Tidal Wave, they've arrested more than 1,100 individuals in just one 3-day operation alone. And so we're looking forward to seeing Mississippi and other states as well really utilize that tool. We know that our state and local law enforcement, they know these areas better than anyone, and they care about these communities better than anyone. They want to get these vicious criminals out. So I think we're going to see a lot of success, a lot more workforce operations, and a lot more raids under this program.
Is it possible that along the way mistakes could be made? I don't know a lot about this story, but it's getting headlines across the state today. A Danish man in Mississippi who's lived in the state for a dozen years is now imprisoned in Louisiana, and he's been there for a few weeks after ICE took him into custody because of what he's calling and what his wife is calling a paperwork miscommunication. Will these mistakes happen, and how can ICE and DHS rectify them if a mistake is made?
Scott, I'm not familiar with this particular case, but I will say CBP, as well as ICE and our law enforcement across the country, follow proper protocols. We do have a high task on our hand, which is to get 15 to 20 million people who have entered this country illegally in the last 4 years out of this country. But when mistakes are made, and if they are made, we make sure we remedy them incredibly quickly, and that we get the people that there was an issue with taken care of. So again, I'll have to come back and give you the details of this, but what we've seen a lot of is a lot of fake stories, a lot lot of lies out there, and we've had to really combat them, hand-to-hand combat on them.
Because at the end of the day, we're not opposed to immigration. Immigrants have built this country as long as it's done legally, and I think that the incentive of paying people to leave the country voluntarily if they're here illegally, with the option of being able to return through the legal process, is a great way to do this without overextending federal resources to round them up and deport them involuntarily.
Exactly. This was a nation, our founding is a nation of legal immigrants, and we celebrate that. But you could not enter this country illegally and expect to be able to stay here as you continue to break the law. So, Scott, you laid it out, but just to remind viewers what DHS and what the Trump administration is offering those who are illegally in this country. It costs about $17,000 to arrest and deport an individual. So we are going to save this taxpayers 70% by offering to fly these illegal immigrants out of this country. They also get a $1,000 stipend and potentially the opportunity to return the legal right way. But if not, if they don't take advantage of this opportunity, we will fine them, we will arrest them, and we will deport them, and they will never be allowed to return. The choice is crystal clear, and we hope people take advantage of self-deportation.
Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary, Homeland Security, doing a bang-up job. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you, Tricia.
Scott, appreciate you. Have a great day.
Middays with Gerard Gibert from the Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk, Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands.
For all your baby.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On Super Talk, Mississippi.
Thank you for letting me hang out today for Gerard. I'm Scott Sands. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Stream us everywhere, supertalk.fm. State dropped their game to Texas A&M. The first pitch for the Southern Miss Texas State game was delayed, and it's still delayed from what you saw, Rhino. I haven't seen anything on the Southern Miss Baseball X feed with a score and haven't looked for them on TV yet, but it seems like all the games are probably going to be late today, if I had to guess. Everything seems to get backed up when they're playing in one place. The Ole Miss game tonight, I believe, is scheduled for 8 p.m. But the Southern Miss game, Texas State hasn't started. That's the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. Should get underway shortly if we have the right information. And with it being me, I'm making no guarantees. Just know that I will likely get something, especially baseball-related, wrong. But, Rhino, let me know if you see the games start before the end of the show.
Will do.
You know what I feel like we should mention but not do anything about? Maybe play a quick clip just because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. Are you a Star Wars geek? Have we talked about this when I've filled in for Gerard before?
I was a big Star Wars fan growing up, and then the prequel trilogy came out. I got to see those in theaters, and at the time...
That will ruin it for everybody.
Well, I enjoyed them at the time, and then it seemed like the culture kind of turned against them, and I was still a fan. I went to see the new trilogy start and saw the first one and felt like it was a decent homage to the original trilogy with Episode 7, and then I saw Episode 8 and was just so disappointed that I've never even seen the last one.
So I didn't mind. Obviously I grew up in the Star Wars generation of the original trilogy. I didn't mind Episodes 7, 8, and 9. And for that matter, I enjoyed Rogue One and Solo. I haven't gotten into all of the Disney series, although I did watch the first season of The Mandalorian. I didn't mind the prequels were just absolutely horrible. They will turn, I think, everybody off to Star Wars if you had not seen the original trilogy. But I mentioned this because today, every day has certain holidays, certain days. Today is supposed to be Talk Like Yoda Day. Which
with 900 years old, you reach look as good you will not.
But if you want to annoy your coworkers, you can talk like Yoda the rest of the day. I should have sent that to Richard this morning and challenged he and Lance to talk like Yoda all morning. That would have been fun to hear. The first mass-produced flying car will go on sale early next year. But even if you get a good deal on financing, it's got a hefty price tag to it. A company in Slovakia called Klein Vision says its new Air car will cost a very reasonable $800,000, up to $1 million if you add upgrades. And even if you can't afford it, you might not want one because it's technically a flying car, but not the hover car that we were promised in like Back to the Future or the Jetsons. Where we're going, we don't need roads. It's basically just a sports car with retractable wings and a propeller in back. So you can't lift off in traffic. You'll still need a runway and a pilot's license. It does transform into an airplane in under 2 minutes with a range of 600 miles and a top cruising speed of 155 miles an hour at 18,000 feet. So it would be really cool to have. But I don't know how practical they'll be. They should be in the skies, at least in Europe, in 2026, and they're hoping to get them approved in the U.S. this fall. I keep seeing ads on social media for something very similar. I think there may be an ultralight that's in that $50,000, $60,000 range with, a 100-mile radius, and you can take off from a relatively short distance so you don't need to go to the airport. And you don't need a pilot's license. But I think I'm worried about that even more because do we really want a bunch of people flying around that don't know what they're doing? That seems like a recipe for disaster, but it's cool technology. I just want my hover cars that I was promised in Back to the Future. Just saying.
Rather keep my feet.
Maybe at some point we'll have that technology.
Yeah, I'd rather keep my feet firmly planted on the ground, and I look forward to the offering Kawasaki teased that. I don't think it's going to be available until the 2050s, I think they said. But have you seen that thing? It's like a
I have not.
Motorized lion that you can ride. It has 4 legs, and it moves around like a 4-legged animal over terrain, and it's kind of molded and shaped like you're riding a Voltron tiger or something.
So it's kind of like to tie the segment together. It's like an ad from Star Wars.
Kinda. It's a little bit more maneuverable than the walkers, but a similar concept.
You got to put up with me another day. I'll be on for Gerard again tomorrow. Friday, he'll be at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby as we get ready for the Memorial Day weekend. Congressman Michael Guest will join us tomorrow in Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi and everywhere at supertalk.fm. I'll be talking about another immigration case from Ohio. If you want to follow me on social media at Scott Sands Media. On X later today, a strange case of a Venezuelan who pretended to be a high school student, even though he's 24 years old. So that another odd story. Back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. here on Super Talk Mississippi. Have a great Wednesday.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.